All right.
It
Fade
worked.
like, here we go. Come by, stand by here. Let me hit the go live button to record on that one. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Everybody, welcome to NTWC Plus. Good to have you along today. We've been gone for a couple of weeks, but we're back and everybody's traveling or going somewhere. Bill is he's not in Southeast Texas, I can tell that. Dr. Hal is on honeymoon. He got married last Friday, so he's not going to join us. So I thought he'd be here anyway, but he's not. So no Dr. Hal today, but Bill's with us. And Bill, where are you sitting right now? Bill Reed, former director of the National Hurricane Center.
I'm sitting in the closest thing to a quiet corner of the lobby of a Marriott Grand Chateau in Las Vegas, Nevada.
There are no quiet spots in Las Vegas. We could do this in the middle of the night. It would be loud, right?
It would be louder, actually, because there'd be all kinds of people at the bar. They didn't know.
It is pretty early in the morning your time, too. It's or by our standard.
It's only right now it's 8 o'clock. So some people are still wandering in from the night on the town, I'll bet.
Well, good to have you along, Bill, as always. Dan Kruger will join us in just a moment. We want to thank our sponsors first before we get to Mr. Kruger to talk about flood vision. Let's thank our sponsors. We're part of these programs week in and week out. USAA, my goodness, USAA has done so much for us over the years, and great partnership with the USAA, and we appreciate all they do. The South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, every year the National Tropical Weather Conference is held on South Padre Island. We're back there in April of 26, and they're a big part of what we do. So thanks to SPI and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Weather Company, Weather Boy, Weather Call, all sponsored. LiveView does part of what we do as well. So we appreciate all of those folks for being part of NTWC. Bill, since we last met, I took a vacation, and it was amazing. I drove 1,900 miles to visit the boyhood home of Bill Reed. And they all knew Bill was from here, Wilmington, Delaware, big sign, welcome to Wilmington, home of Bill Reed. Picture of you on the wall of where you worked. Actually, it was a pretty cool little visit, Bill. And we were talking about this a little bit before the show. Cities in the Northeast are different from cities in the Southwest, aren't they?
They sure are. I was very jealous following your trip. You made a point of describing the best cheesesteak you ever had at the charcoal pit. Oh my God, you don't get those down here, as you well know.
No, the guys I was with, I was moving my son, and the guys I was with, they had a cheeseburger. And I said, no, we're in the suburbs of Philadelphia. We have to get a cheesesteak. And the charcoal pit where you worked, when was that?
Summer of 65. And I guess the last I worked there was summer of 70.
So there was nobody working there that was even born yet then, just so you know.
No, there was the original, most of the original workers were still there, and it had opened in 56 or 7, I think. And they were all a little bit older. The youngest was a little bit older than I was, but not by much, but they're all for sure retired by now. That's not the kind of work for the elderly.
Yeah, the average employee was probably 20. So absolutely. But we'll make them a proud sponsor of the program, the Charcoal Pit, Wilmington, Delaware. So yeah. But it was fun to see. It's a fun city. And downtown was, I'll put fun in quotation marks when we talk about downtown, by night at least. But anyway, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Let's see. You want to introduce our big guest today? Because I'm looking forward to the program. I think we've got some great stuff. We're talking about flood vision, and I think we're going to learn a lot today. Bill, take it away.
All right. Well, our guest today is Dan Kruger, who's the founder of Flood Vision, a groundbreaking company using technology and storytelling to raise awareness about flood risks. With expertise in environmental science and emergency management, Dan has become a trusted voice on resilience and preparedness. Through Flood Vision, he works to give communities, businesses, and leaders the tools they need to better understand, anticipate, and respond to flooding. His mission is simple: turn data into action that saves lives and property. And how timely is this, folks, given the serious and deadly flash flooding we've had pretty much all across the eastern 2/3 of America this summer? And the messaging is a discussion a lot of us in meteorology are having. What do we need to do different to improve the outcome of these rapid evolving kind of events? So Dan, welcome to our show.
For having me, guys. Just to clarify, So Flood Vision is a project under the company Climate Central, under the sea level rise team. And I am the technical field producer and project manager. I work with some very smart people. I think you're giving me a lot more credit than I deserve.
Yeah, that was your polite way of saying, I'm not a meteorologist, so don't blame me if you don't like your weather today.
Correct.
Yeah. So why don't you, just to start it off, why don't you give us a rundown of exactly what it is you do and how you accomplish the goals you've set out to do?
Sure. So to step back just a bit, I'll explain kind of what Flood Vision is. Flood Vision is, if you imagine Google Street View for flooding or sea level rise. And essentially, so we basically have two vehicles that are set up with multiple cameras on the roof. We shoot stereoscopic visuals. So basically, the way the human eye would see the world in 3D, we have two sets of cameras that shoot stereoscopically, and we have two LiDAR, which shoot out a laser point cloud, and we have a very precise GPS unit that's all married together with a robust computer and electronics box, and I'll show you what that looks like real quick. But basically, we have all this really fancy equipment, and when we drive and collect data, we're able to take and process that data after the fact and add water levels with precision based on any scenario that you can think of, whether it's future sea level rise or past storm events or future storm events, and we're also collecting lots of other metadata as we go along.
That's amazing. So let's take like a recent event like Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago. Were you able to use some of the data from that and sort of calibrate or correlate what you guys do in that area for your visuals?
So what we can do is if there's a specific location that had gotten a certain level of inundation or flooding, we can then, and if we've collected data in that area, we could quickly add water levels based on those historical events. So if there's a location in your state or regionally that got a specific amount of water, we can show that. But we can also, if there's a forecast for a certain water level that's coming, we could also show that to sort of help warn people ahead of time.
Now, that'd be very useful. I think it's sometimes hard, especially for like a resort area, a text or a technical warning or whatnot may not register with them because they're not from the area, so they don't exactly know what we're talking about. Whereas if you have a visual that shows how high the floodwaters might get, that should help them understand why they're being told to leave, I would think.
Exactly. So if we show a place that is recognizable to folks that live in a specific area, someplace that they drive by every day, I think it's more meaningful when they see that this is what it could look like, or if it gets, this is actually based on a past hurricane. I'm not sure which one, but this is showing almost 3 feet above the road level, and then sorry, let me get out of there. Show you some more in a sec.
Yeah, in the past, there's some communities before we had these kind of internet-based computer high resolution modeling techniques to do it. Just like you said, recognizable buildings like post office, city hall, things like that. They'd have a stake with height markings on it and different categories of storm to give a relative idea of what the risk of storm surge was in the area. Real estate people hated that. They wanted them out of there, but
exactly. Yeah,
people kept them in.
We try not to show people's homes. We don't want to devalue anyone's home or anything like that. We just want to help show what could happen in areas so that people have the knowledge to ahead of time.
Yeah, but I would think maybe not having it in the public domain, but if you had a website where a person could look up their address and get a visual of what that would be, that might be real helpful because we have a real problem convincing people that aren't right on the edge of water that they need flood insurance, for example. I'm sure you're aware of that.
100%.
That's a big project with Climate Central, is trying to get people to take these kind of mitigations.
What we found, at Climate Central, we have the maps. We have maps with layers, but seeing an actual visual is much more impactful than just seeing a line on a map that the water could be at this specific level. People don't react. It's a much more, like I said, impactful if they see a recognizable or an iconic location in their town under a specific water level versus just a street map type thing.
That is correct. There was a study not too recently, but there was a study done that trying to come up with a way to produce maps for evacuations. And the conclusion was that at least a third of the people living along the coast are not savvy. It's just not in their nature to correctly read the data that's on maps. It's hard for the guys you're talking to today because our whole livelihood's on maps. So it's hard for us to believe that, but it really is.
So we do have a site, and I'll show you, floodriskviewer.org. Let me share this for you. Sorry, that's our internal interface. I'm going to show you here. Apologies, guys. There we go. So we do have the Flood Vision Risk Viewer. It's floodriskviewer.org. And this allows meteorologists, media officials, government officials like yourselves to download visuals based on locations that we've collected data in the past. And it's ArcGIS based. All of our visuals, our visualizations that we create are also there's quite a bit of metadata included in each of them, and it shows latitude, longitude, the address or location of that specific location, and also different water levels and how we how we created these.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I recognize that.
Close to home, Tim, that picture.
Yeah, that's about a mile from home. Yes. That's the Butler Grand in the background. I know that well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, these are some more locations near you too. Let me see here. Apologies. This is
I don't know if I want to see these or not.
This is also South Padre Island.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's 2070 with a 1% annual chance of a flood.
Wow.
This is also South Padre Island.
That's really close to my house.
Yeah. This is 2050 with a 1% annual.
Wow.
So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Oh, I need to sell mine before that. Yeah.
Okay. Which do you know offhand which modeling trend of sea level rise goes into making those?
Yes. So we actually, let me share my screen for a second again. So we can use any scenarios. We basically have an internal interface that I'll show you in a second here. So if you can see my screen, we have an internal interface. This map shows anywhere that we've driven and collected data. And then the modeling options, we can ingest any modeling options that are out there. The elevation doesn't change in the visuals that we're collecting. So we can use, if a particular state or region has their own modeling options, we can ingest those into our interface and we could show those. Now, typically we've been using NOAA or the U.S. Interagency 2022 models to show with sea level rise and annual floods.
Fair enough. Now, so I forgot what I was going to ask on that. Yeah, that's good for the storm surge. Now, like say on the stream flooding, how far into detail can you get on like the watershed, the small creeks and streams that feed into the main stem rivers?
So if there are models for those, we can use those. If they're so basically we get the elevation of so not only are we collecting sort of road elevation and the elevation of every pixel in the screen, essentially, we're also collecting entry floor elevations for all the homes and structures that we pass, which is pretty valuable data. But we can show, if there's a model for it, we can ingest it, and then we can show it based on the elevation of where we're collecting data. This is actually, I was hoping Hal would be here because this is Galveston here. And
Yeah.
this is also, this is like, it's the label at the bottom also shows this is a U.S. Interagency 2022 sea level rise scenario for 2070 with a 10% annual chance. And it's showing, this is showing water height of about 6 inches above the road level, or 3 feet 5 inches above the local high tide line.
Yeah. Or something that happens almost every year down there without a storm. Yeah, really low ground around that causeway.
This is also Galveston. And this is 2070 with a 10% annual.
Wow.
Okay, I see. Yeah, you can use any one of the scenarios for sea level rise. Could a user come in and go through that same sequence like you did to kind of get them an upper and lower bound of what their risk may be?
Yes. Now we chose a preset of curated visuals for the flood risk viewer. So with lots of different inundation levels, and we're not just showing water above the road as just to see what it would look like. These are based on future sea level rise scenarios or historical events. So we're not trying to scare anybody, but we are sort of using real data.
Yeah, and when they get into it, it's annotated just like you showed, so they'll know what the basis for that was.
That's exactly right. And we're in the process of updating our labels to make them a little more visually compelling. They were a little sort of bland at the bottom there, but we want everybody to know that this is, and we call them modeled visualizations, so that it's, if you just say image, it sounds like anybody with an iPhone could take an image and add Photoshop water levels. These are based in scientific data.
Yeah. So who are I know this is fairly recent you've been doing it, but who are your primary users of this information?
So we're still trying to learn that, and meteorologists have used this. We've worked with I'll actually show you. So recently, last year, we did what we called the Edge of America tour, and I'll show you what that looked like. Okay. So we set out with our fully electric Ford F-150 Lightning with all of the equipment on top, and we started in Blue Hill, Maine, last June of 2024, and then we ended in South Padre Island, Texas, in January of this past year, of this year. So we collected data all along the way. We met with media, government officials, community leaders. We met. We learned that the Flood Rover is a very powerful communications tool. You can see Hal in the middle here. This was in Galveston.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really, what we wanted to do is exactly what I was explaining, that we wanted to drive by locations of interest and locations that people would recognize in their towns. And then we could create visualizations based on the future sea level rise scenarios or flood events, or if a meteorologist like yourselves needed a visual for a storm that's coming their way, we can spin up those visuals very quickly. And so these are people that we've met along the way in Rhode Island and Maryland and Wilmington, North Carolina, and workshop in Mobile, Alabama. We just started work. We did a project with the Northeast Florida Regional Council with Farah Ilami, and we showed what this could look like in Fernandina Beach and other locations in Florida. And this actually was based, I believe, no, this is a sea level rise scenario, but again, showing iconic locations that people would recognize. We just did a project with the Delaware Sea Grant, and this was the mayor of Milton, Delaware, who rode along with me and showed me some locations that are meaningful to the people in Milton. And we also worked with a person from Cape Canaveral, Florida, who was using some of our visuals in their work. We did, and this is important to the meteorologists that are watching, we did just launch a page on the climatecentral.org site specifically for meteorologists and media to request curated visuals, so that if there is a storm coming, they can go to this page, and they can email me or info@climatecentral.org to request locations that are meaningful or relevant to any storm that's coming.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tim, you're taking notes. What you got?
I'm taking a lot of notes because we tried for our hurricane preparedness special, which we air every year, first day of the hurricane season. I literally did what you said. I went out with my phone. I took a picture of landmarks on South Padre Island, and then used what I knew and used what data I could find to say, okay, here the street is 7 feet above the water level. Let's do a 10-foot storm surge and used AI to generate this. But you got real data, and that's what and we use that in our hurricane show based on what knowledge we had. But the fact that you're driving the streets with the LiDAR and everything else really makes this useful. Something that I, as a broadcaster, can use, and I think any broadcaster watching could find this incredibly useful to really show people, not just tell people, but show people what to expect.
Sure. So we use the founder of this, not me, is a gentleman named Dr. Scott Culp. He's a computational scientist who developed this, and our CEO Ben Strauss. But basically, Scott, brilliant, has trained a neural network. We have our own custom AI that's we have multiple AIs specifically for flood vision. One is to find doorways of structures that we've passed, and that gives us the entry floor elevation of that home or structure. And then the other one is to, using a lot of different points of data, but basically what you would do in Photoshop yourself, where you would mask out a specific location to show a water level, our trained neural network, or AI, is able to do that. And then based on the lighting and reflections in that particular still visual, it's able to generate water levels based on the modeling scenario that we feed it for that specific location and the elevation that we've already collected in that area. And so,
on the website, you got, I noticed a couple of ways where there's a slider you go back and forth with and without water, basically. What's the availability of that for everywhere you drove? I mean, what's on your website that you talk about? Can we see that for other locations?
We can generate them for anywhere. So anywhere that we've collected data, we could generate if there's inundation based on something on scientific data. So we could just add water levels everywhere we've driven, but it's not based on anything specific. But if we pass through an area that is, in the future could have water or had water in the past, we could show those water levels the way you're saying. We can give you a before, the original photo or the original visual that we drove by and collected, and then we can give you visuals based on whatever scenarios are meaningful to you.
What's surprising you as you do this research, because and you're putting this together? I know you traveled a big piece of the country, a big piece of the coast. Is there anything that came back and you went, wow, didn't expect that?
So, well, for me as a technical field producer, I'm in the field with all this equipment. We have, like I said, and as you guys know in the broadcast field, you have cameras and all sorts of things, and cables, and things go wrong fairly often. You have to be a troubleshooter to figure out why is this not working, or why is this not working. So we've learned quite a bit over the past few years. When we started this project, we just had 2 cameras on the roof facing one direction with a LiDAR and the GPS. And basically, I did every street that I drove, I'd drive twice so we could get both directions. And then we said, hey, let's add 4 cameras. And then they all have to be perfectly synced together. And along with the LiDAR and the GPS, when we collect this data, I send it back to Scott Culp, our computational scientist, to be processed. And they have to, when just processing the GPS, it has to take into account, the curvature of the earth and the atmospheric conditions in that particular location to get the accuracy that we need for these visuals that we're creating. So there's a lot of data that goes on behind the scenes in this. Again, troubleshooting in the field is part of my day-to-day. Why didn't this camera turn on, or why is this LiDAR dropping frames? And then Scott is able to code stuff into the platform that we're using for this to collect this data, so I can see what's going on at a particular time. But meeting people and what we found. So to your original question there, what I found that's interesting in the field. The truck that we use is a really good communications tool. people see this and they're like, are you guys storm chasers, or what are you doing here? And we say, well, we're sort of future storm chasers. We're showing what it could look like in the future. And then, we give an explanation of what flood vision is and how it works and where they can find it. You can also go to floodvision.org, which will take you to our site as well.
That's fascinating. Alex, I'm going to ask the second question from Casper, just so you know, not the first, but the second, because it goes into what we're talking about now. This is from one of our viewers. He says, when gathering LiDAR data in heavily populated communities, can some of the activities of the general public create any interference or holes in the data?
That's a great question, and something that we found out very early on is that we've upgraded our LiDAR multiple times, but LiDAR doesn't play well with reflections, with water, or with fences. So it gets sort of tricked by those type of things. So it can create holes like that, or there could be an area where our neural network doesn't mask something perfectly around a sign specifically for that reason.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay, let's take a break and get a tropical update, then come back. I know Bill's got a lot more questions. I got more viewer questions, and I have a ton more. So, Bill, let's take a look at the tropics for today. Then we'll come back with Dan and talk more about this fascinating topic. Bill?
Okay, Tim. Yeah, I've got something to talk about this week, other than maybe it'll get busy. It will be busy.
It is busy.
They pop up start there. Just for a quick overview, we're looking at the Atlantic Basin, the functioning areas of it, starting in the east and moving west. This is a tropical wave that really looks healthy in the satellite image. It came off Africa 2 days ago. This is one that came off 2 or 3 days before that. And it looks healthier than it has been looking. It's large. The area of influence of the wave covers a fairly large area, and there's now some beginning signs of some convection. It's working its way in the warmer water, getting a little farther away from the dry, stable air that it emerged from Africa in. So we're going to be watching that. And of course, there's Aaron, and we'll talk at length about Aaron as we come down the road. The anticipations on the ones trailing Aaron. The Hurricane Center carries a 40% chance of development, but you really need to read the fine print. It's in a favorable environment for some development now, but it's going to enter a hostile environment of more stable air again, dry air, and wind shear by the time it gets in the central Atlantic area here, and it'll also be in the wake of whatever develops from this system. So they don't really expect this one to survive, at least in the short term, crossing the main development region. But kind of like we remind people on Harvey. Harvey died after coming out of the development region, but it was reborn. We'll have to keep following that wave as it comes west to see if things change beyond our capability to forecast that far in advance. This disturbance, it's still a couple days away from development, but it's given a 60% chance of developing, and I'll show you the models are reasonably enthusiastic about it, especially if it does move and form up in the area displaced away from the wake of Aaron. Aaron upwelling has cooled the water some up in here, so it's not quite as warm an environment to feed the storms that come right across just north of the Caribbean at the present time. Okay, Aaron, this is one of the more impressive satellite images of a hurricane you'll ever get. It's very circular, very symmetrical bands are on that. It's now several bands that wrap entirely around it. Yesterday it was sheared on this side, and you couldn't see any outflow. Now the outflows looks robust in all directions. The eye is occasionally visible as cloud fill when I first looked at it this morning, but it's getting kind of large, the eye wall cloud there. Maybe we'll get one of those fat tire type circulation centers going with us. And the wind field is tremendous. It's affecting almost the entire Western Atlantic now, and will continue to do so as it moves north. The infrared imagery of it pinpoints the eye a lot better, and you can actually see that it's now moving north. which is what it was predicted to do. And that trend will keep on for another day or so, and then it'll get picked up by the westerlies. See what our aircraft is into on this. Pressure is still falling, and these are 90-mile legs, these outbound legs, and cross tracks in there, maybe even went a little farther. The hurricane force winds, the very strong winds, in fact, the strongest measured on a couple of the runs, were way out here at 100 miles. That's a tremendous area of hurricane force winds generating the big seas as our storm moves northward. Tomer Berg up at the OU has a tremendous skill at producing graphics, the way he displays them. I like this one of air and air. You got the past conditions and the intensities in a color code so you could know what the history was. It's overlaid on the sea surface temperature, so you can see whether it just finished crossing a pocket of slightly warmer than the surrounding area water. And it's got about another day and a half before it'll be leaving the ideal warm waters to the gradually cooler waters. But it stays in the area that supports tropical cyclone at least through 3 days. Then it's forecast to go extratropical. On the impacts from the National Hurricane Center, given the large size, we're going to have a storm surge impact. Right now, the peak values for impact are shown from just south of Myrtle Beach up to the entrance to Delaware Bay around Cape May, southern Delaware, with the highest amounts where the Outer Banks stick out into the Atlantic with 2 to 4 feet. And there have been evacuation orders issued for portions of this area. Those 2 to 4 feet will wash out or cover with sand the only roadway in and out of there. New last year was a national map showing the risk of rip currents. I like it as a quick visual to tell you what you're hearing on the media anyway, is that it's going to be relatively dangerous anywhere on the East Coast from Florida up through Maine, southern Maine, of dangerous rip currents and high waves. And sometimes storms like this, the only fatalities we get are people that get caught in the rip currents or rough waves and drown, or if a ship at sea manages to get in the way of the storm. Which brings me to the next slide, a current plot of where ships are in the Atlantic basin right now, and the very noticeable hole is what we can do today in the way of informing ships and forecasting in advance allows ships to get out of harm's way as long as they heed the warnings in there. Not too many decades ago, before we had satellite and reconnaissance, they had no way of knowing exactly where the storm was. The forecasts were generally not skillful past 24 hours, and many of our storms had their highest fatalities for lost ships at sea. Another new thing that came to light this week is our colleague at Weather Nerds has upgraded his ensemble method of display, and he's added the European and GFS ensembles are as they were. He's added Google DeepMind's 2 different ensembling techniques using AI, and I've got the most recent one they're developing displayed here. And he changed the base map to sea temperature anomalies, and it quickly comes to mind is that most of the basin now is above normal again. If you remember earlier this year, we had this cool water that's off of Africa extended most of the way across the open tropical Atlantic. This storm is probably there may be subtle differences between the various models, but they've all been on pretty much on cue as to the forecast of Aaron. The AI model is pretty robust in forecasting development of our system in the middle of the tropical Atlantic. Now, once it gets into the edge of the tropics, into the subtropics, and then it will also go out to sea according to that model. As for what's beyond 2 weeks, I usually don't pay much attention to this, but it is the peak of hurricane season. And the Climate Center folks are showing an increase of favorable conditions in that as we go through the weeks, into week 3, from 2 and 3, and maybe a return to an active Eastern Pacific that went quiet after its big burst. Last but not least is today we'll get a new forecast for the next 2 weeks out of Phil Klotzbach at Colorado State. But I wanted to show you his forecast 2 days before Aaron formed. He was predicting that it would be above normal as the highest probability event, and that certainly has verified. I think at that point I have run out of the tropics. Any points there to clarify, Tim?
Well, this is such a great time of year. You don't have to go to the other side of the Pacific to find things to talk about. Amazing visuals. I like all of those things. The vessel finder is fabulous to see what the ships are avoiding. You see the donut hole out there. And we're just getting started. I mean, what day did Dr. Gray ring the bell and have the donuts? What day was that? August
Today, I think, the 20th.
There you go. So, and it's living up to expectations. So, a great update.
Yeah, the first horse jumped the gun, Aaron, big Cape Verde. So that's pretty much what he was shooting for with the Cape Verde stars, which when he originally developed the seasonal forecast were the ones that form in the main development region were what he based his forecast on. I asked him about the Gulf once, and he says, I don't know how to account for them.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging. Well, thank you. That was a great update. As we come to that time of year, we all just have to pay attention, keep your vacation plans on hold just in case. So good stuff. Let's thank our sponsors mid-break while we have that opportunity to tell them thank you for being part of the program week in and week out. Special thanks to USAA. USAA, we've been doing a lot of things. Bill and Alex and Hal and Storm Science Network and the organization we were before that. And USAA has been there all along, and we appreciate them supporting this and the National Tropical Weather Conference. It's just important that they're there. They've made it possible for us to do the things we do. South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, they may not want to watch this one because they see those pictures of South Padre going, I don't know if I like that. but the point is, we can see you're showing some pictures that really say what the future could hold, and that's scary stuff. So it's good that information gets out there. The Weather Company, those are the folks who provide weather graphics to broadcast outlets all across the country, and we appreciate what they do for us. Weather Boy, they do a scholarship for college students. They basically pay for a full round trip ticket, registration, hotel, everything for college students from around the United States to come to the National Tropical Weather Conference. It's a contest. If you win, it's an all-expenses paid trip to South Padre Island for the conference. So that's pretty cool. And Live View, they're the folks who help us do live broadcasts back to our home markets when you're on South Padre Island. So thanks to them for all they do. All right, let's get back to Dan. Let me ask the other viewer question, and then we'll go from there. This is a question that says, with the increasing threat of inland freshwater flooding from a warmer climate, are there any plans to use the flood vision technology in non-coastal communities? And Dan, take it away.
Yes. So if I think, as I explained earlier, if there are precipitation models for rivers and locations inland, we can show the flooding. We can show what it could look like with inland or precipitation flooding. We just need those. There is a company in the UK called Fathom that we have sort of ingested some of their data, just not everywhere. And then we can show what precipitation inland flooding could look like. We're actually in the process of building a model to, like I said, there's a lot of metadata and data that we're collecting with the visuals and data that we're collecting. So we're building a model to show entry floor elevations all through a state. So basically, that's, recently I was driving through Delaware and all the different locations in Delaware. So, you had mentioned Wilmington earlier. I was in Wilmington and Newark and, east, west, central, and southern, all over the place, so that we can build our model with a lot more different structures and data to feed this model. And I was just in New Jersey doing the same thing, driving and collecting data sort of all over inland and coastal areas. So yes, we can show coastal or inland areas as well as coastal areas for flooding.
Which would become a pretty ambitious project as you go inland, because there's a lot of places in this country that have issues that you'd have. This would take some time.
Absolutely. And then we've seen that recently with North Carolina and Texas and other locations for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Bill, jump back in. I've been hogging for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can see down in a lot of places the Appalachians, of course, the hill country of Texas. These rural roads are paved right across the small creeks. I can see doing like a simulation type sense to show what different water levels look like on those things, and coming up with creative ways to help the local officials that warn their public that people are going to listen to, at least, that what's a visualization might help them come to the conclusion they need to close the road or warn on it.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's the elevation data that we're collecting, like I said, doesn't change. So, but if there's a model that shows in a particular location, if 2 inches of rain came down and this is what it could look like at this particular area, we could show that for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like an area for further development that's got promise.
Absolutely.
Because I see, after our talk with the AI guy at Google, I'm kind of convinced that AI might play a big role in coming up with some of the flooding, because a lot of those have a history of flooding, and so they have historical data that they might be able to use to help on that. And it might work for you guys also.
If the models are there, we can show it. Yeah, and that historical data is super valuable to AI, like you're saying. The more data you can feed it, the more robust it becomes.
Technology, not my strong suit. So if I'm asking a stupid question, just humor me and smile. Where do you see the next generation of technology doing what you're doing? Where do you see it coming into play?
I think that's an interesting question, and definitely, like you said, AI has a big part to play in it. It's not I'm not the computational scientist who invented this, but I mean, one of the things, and this goes back to one of the questions you asked earlier, Tim, about like sort of what we learned in the field is that, and I'll share my screen for a second just to show you, one of the things that we learned was that collecting this data on a regular computer in a truck or a gaming computer does not work. You can see that there's a lot of cables and wires, basically vibration and heat from driving through different locations. So mid Edge of America tour, we ended up upgrading our very robust computer to an even more beefy computer that could take heat and vibrations when in the field. So that was something very important that we learned, that we were like, why are these camera dropping frames? And it turned out that it was the vibrations and heat from just being on the road all the time. You're driving through locations in 90-degree weather, and a gaming computer doesn't play well with that kind of heat or vibrations. This was our driver, Max Grader, who was in the field for the Edge of America tour for most of the East Coast during the tour.
Wow.
This is what a LiDAR point cloud looks like over a visual, and then we can take that and add water levels to it.
Wow.
I can see, Tim, I can see everyone that's in the broadcast and digital media world getting key places, examples of that. So when the storm threat comes up, they can give viewers an idea what's coming at them.
No, absolutely. That's something that again, we tried to create, kind of just winging it, if you will, just trying to make it work. And here you've got the real data that's going to be incredibly useful if a storm threatens in the near future, and in the long term, what the long term looks like.
Yeah, if anyone is interested, you can visit floodriskviewer.org. And again, any of these, you can look at the map there and you could click on any of those locations that we've already curated visuals for. And they're all downloadable with all the metadata that goes along with it. And again, if there is a location that is meaningful or specific that we don't have, you can request it by just emailing our team, and then we can create them for you.
That's pretty amazing. Incredibly useful information. And yeah, we'll be sharing that with my crew, but with everybody that can use it. So what I say is, this is twofold, of course. We're talking about preparation for storms and the visuals that get people to act. But long term, I assume that's the main focus of what you're doing, is to show what things are going to look like 50 years from now, 100 years from now. And that's the long term goal here, I assume.
Exactly. We want to. We one of our sayings is, if you can see the future, you can shape the future. And so we want to show people what it could look like, so that we can change things now, or we can make small changes that will help mitigate this in the future.
Who's funding this? How's this funded?
So Climate Central is all through donors and grants. So it's all privately. We're not funded through any government agencies. We're a nonpartisan organization that is basically just trying to help people.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating, Bill. It's I love seeing this stuff that's so useful to all of us.
Yeah, I think I noticed on it looks like on all of this you give all three options: a low, intermediate, and high, as far as sea level rise. I think it's very important. Some people just show the worst case scenario, and it just becomes too daunting for people to buy into.
That's
They
correct.
don't see it, but by showing all three, I think is important. And then maybe those of us with other graphics can show, okay, here's how it's been going. Somewhere like in our area is probably in the low to intermediate trend in the Galveston area so far. So they have an idea against the reality check.
That's exactly right. We can show, like, some states have their own that they need to show a specific, like Delaware or Florida might have a specific model that they need to show, or that's meaningful for that particular state. So yes, we could show low, intermediate, high, and any models that are meaningful.
Huh. I've lost my shot on that again. Obviously, it's a still water show, so the storm surge with wave action on it is probably too difficult to tackle on this kind of visualization.
At scale, yes, right now, but we have played around with some AI that take still visuals and then add motion to them, which is kind of interesting. But again, we don't want to scare people with just adding random visual or random movement to a particular still might scare some people. So we just want to. Currently, we're just using still visuals, but yes, I could see that in the future. Motion.
It's very important. It's like it's distinctly different how quickly the damage occurs from the front row of Barrier Island homes that take the brunt of the waves with no interference from the buildings and whatnot. By the time you get 3 to 6 blocks in, it's mostly the stillwater flooding that's doing the damage, rather than not stillwater, but no, not the wave action, but the bulk of the moving water instead.
Exactly. Like these visuals are also not taking into account any like levees or seawalls that have been added to a location. So and also these are just still, so they're not showing like you said, wind or any of that can be even more devastating.
Okay.
I know you prepared a couple of big slide decks for this, and we're actually just kind of jump through the slides. Is there anything in there as we get ready to wrap up here pretty soon? Is there anything in there that we've not asked you about? You got a slide that really drives the point home. Something in there that you're going, boy, you guys need to see this.
I've showed you quite a few. I've kind of quickly gone through quite a few of them, but I think one of the pretty important things that we are collecting is these entry floor elevations, and like every home and structure is completely different, and this data is really valuable. Like I said, we've trained a neural network to find the difference, because just looking at some homes, you know, you might not be able to tell the difference between a door and a window very, very easily. And so we've had to feed our model, you know, thousands and thousands of visuals. And that's part of what I'm doing again recently in Delaware and New Jersey, is building out this model even more, so that, you know, homes and structures on the coast are different than homes and structures inland and closer to the other sides of states. So we're trying to feed it as much as we can. I think we look through my deck real quick. We've seen the different water levels. Again, they look pretty real. You know, it's again, South Padre Island, your town.
Yep. Stop on that one for a second.
Yep.
Go back on that one. That, trying to see exactly where you are there. The hotel where we have the conference is right across the street from that.
That's right. I think that's
So
where I stopped data collection there. That was when I ended in South Padre Island. I think this is one of the locations that I kind of pulled in to take down the equipment. But yeah, this is the U.S. Interagency or NOAA sea level 2022 sea level rise scenario at intermediate for 2050 with a 1% annual chance flood, which, as you all know, these 1% chance floods are seem to be happening more than 1% anymore. I think we might need to reevaluate. But yeah, this was I enjoyed South Padre Island. I think it's a beautiful place.
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Was that 1% chance event, was that a static number that's currently available, or did it get adjusted as time went on?
I believe it's from the 2022 data that we're using for this.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So it may have, yeah, like you said, if it's being adjusted, then
Yeah, because the same problem here in Houston on the rainwater flooding, the updated rainfall data, what used to be a 100-year rain event for 24 hours is now a 50-year event.
right.
But the flooding is more complicated because, like you pointed out, every basin is different. So the now 50-year event falls on this basin and floods a whole bunch of things because the river goes wild. But if it falls on this one over here, not much of anything happens. And it's a lot more complicated to pull out the flood values for that from the rain.
Exactly. And that's what makes precipitation models and inland flooding models more challenging for us. So if it's, you know, if it's from a state or it's from a, you know, a scientific organization, then we could use it.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguing going on for development. Is the 100-year for development purposes, it's a static number. What is the current FEMA 100-year flood zone? And that's the defining factor in a lot of communities. Some have gone up higher, like to 500, or added feet to the base flood elevation off the 100 to try to stay ahead of that, but not everybody.
We did add the 500-year storm or 0.2% annual as one of the options in these to show, you know, because again, these are happening more frequently.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was just saying yes. What you have, Tim?
I'll just say, as we come to the end of the program, I want to see if Dan, if you've got any thoughts you want to leave us with. It's fascinating work that you're doing, and I think it's very useful work when it comes to hurricane preparedness, storm surge preparedness, and then long term in terms of just overall preparedness. Is there any thoughts you want to leave us with as we get close to the end here today?
Well, I appreciate you having me, guys. And I think it's the one line that I said before that is pretty important. Is you can see the future, you can shape the future. So I think these, you know, by seeing these visuals now in things that, you know, could happen in a 30-year mortgage, like the 2070 or 2060, you know, we could do little things now that could help the future. Just making small changes and you know, that's what we need to do.
Well, thank you for your work in getting us closer to understanding. I think that's the big thing. You understand it, you can act on it. Bill, what did we learn today? I think this is a great program.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we got to this point, I got to thinking about it 18 years ago when I was first at the Hurricane Center, the 16, I'm pushing time too fast. The storm surge was a 1 or 2 sentence text line in a long advisory product. Since then, through Jamie Rome's good work, we've developed the storm surge warning and the ability to forecast peak values and inundations along the coast. To me, this is the next step, and we've seen less. We've had a number of storms hit with bad storm surge, and not had the great loss of life that we've had in the past. And we're getting to where we can correctly warn people for surge. I think this is what Dan and his folks have been doing is one of the next steps to take us even further into improving response to warnings.
Terrific. I agree. And I think this is a big step from what we tried to do this year. And that's kind of guess based on what I know, what you know, what the picture shows, and actual fact-based stuff that we can show to the public. So Dan, thank you. Sincerely appreciate your time today, and a great program, and good luck with all your work in the future. Thank
you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to thank our sponsors who are part of the program week in and week out. They're here for us so we can be here for you. USAA, South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Weather Company, Weather Boy, Live View, all part of the National Tropical Weather Conference at NTWC Plus. Of course, hope you can join us in April on South Padre Island, show you exactly where those pictures were taken, and we'll go from there. That's it for today. We'll see you again next week on NTWC Plus. Thanks for watching. See you. I think we're done.
Yeah, we're good. All right. We're just coming right back out of it. There you go. Awesome.
Well, nice